Hello and welcome to this on-demand webinar from Avenue Z. And today we are here to talk about your new growth engine, AI search for consumer brands, specifically how health, wellness, and beauty brands will win in the AI search era. My name is Whitney Hart, Chief Strategy Officer at Avenue Z. And here at Avenue Z, we are an AI-first agency for influence. Our focus is on supporting brands drive revenue and reputation in large language models, focusing on how things like technical optimization, PR, and content creation and deployment can move the needle in your AI visibility. And today we're going to kick things off with a question. Have you ever wondered how your favorite AI chatbot learns and how and why it gives the recommendations that it does? We are going to dig into some examples from ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and Grok to do a deeper dive into what these large language models are recommending and how they are doing it. So today we are going to start looking at high-quality meal replacement solutions and specifically with ChatGPT. So here we're going to kick things off with the initial prompt. In this case, the individual typing is looking for a high-quality meal replacement solution for the office and on the go. And ChatGPT will go away and do some web research to come back with an initial set of examples. Its examples are focused around different powders that could be used, as well as potential bars and other shakes and replacements. And it will go through and use third-party recommendations like Good Housekeeping and Healthline to make those recommendations. So it's pulling in those important earned placements, the placements that your PR team or PR agency is potentially securing for your brand, to go through and recommend products to the user. And some of these reviews are from 5 years ago. ChatGPT frequently pulls in older articles that it considers very authoritative. It will also pull in older posts from places like Reddit. So it's very common to see ChatGPT rely on recommendations from Reddit, from posts or subreddits that are 6 years old. So here now we're refining the prompt even further, some targeted shake options. What is best? What are the pros and cons? We see that Huel is highly recommended, Wonderslim, Ensure is recommended. Kachava is the highest recommended by ChatGPT, followed by Huel ready-to-drink meal. So we see that it is then going to go through and give practical everyday and mid-tier options, more natural and affordable options. So ChatGPT is breaking this down into different categories with pros and cons and helping provide tips for choosing. So this is a very different user experience than just Google search, where you're clicking through and considering 10 blue links down a page, maybe some paid search ad placements at the top. This is a very detailed user experience that the large language model is helping. It is helping the user understand what questions they should be asking, what is the best fit for their lifestyle, and more. And as it's going through, it is using the latest information from brand websites, from consumer PR placements, from different third-party communities, as I said before, like Reddit, to be able to provide these recommendations and come up with the best targeted recommendation for that user's need. Next up, we're looking at Grok. And in this case, doing a query around relaxing birthday gifts for a girlfriend. In this case, the prompt is for a super techie girlfriend, and she's always stressed out and anxious about her job. So what are the best ideas that potentially could be purchased? In this case, Grok is interesting. It's an interesting large language model. It is not the most highly used, but it has a unique and proprietary source in that it is the only large language model that can access X, or formerly known as Twitter. And so that huge, rich abundance of commentary, chit-chat, and chatter that happens on X can only be harnessed by Grok not by any other large language model. And so in this case, I have elected to use Grok for this query around birthday gifts because I want that back and forth. I want to know, what is the X community saying? How are they engaging? What is that source of information that they recommend that really sets Grok apart when you're considering what to use and why to use it? In this case, Grok is going through looking at self-care baskets and recommendations, different bath bombs that are being recommended, bubble bath, different add-ons, scented candles, this sort of thing. And again, it's going to go through and use third-party websites. You can see it lists over 25 sources in this case for this specific prompt: Reddit, Amazon, Target.com is also pulled in, so a variety, New York Times. So everything from the most authoritative earned media sources to the most commercial sources and everywhere in between is pulled in and is potentially recommended. From here, the prompt becomes very specific. Lush has been mentioned a few times in Grok's answer. So here I'm asking, what are reviews of their products? Give me a pros and cons list. What should I dig into further? And again, this is where I really want Grok's information. I want those X posts. I want that sentiment pulled in. That is why I have elected to use Grok for this query as opposed to things like ChatGPT that don't have access to that data source. And so here it's going in this case, we have 40 different sources that it's pulling in. And you can go through and see where and why Grok is sourcing and giving the pros and cons that it has given, which is always really interesting. And it's interesting to go through and consider, do I have relationships at those third-party outlets? Do I know the publishers at the New York Times, for example? Do I have a Reddit community management approach that will foster positive engagement on that platform? Do I have an X community management approach that will foster community engagement on that platform? These are all things to consider as you go through and look at what Grok is saying about you and where those sources are being pulled from to make Grok's final recommendation. And here you can see specific examples where I've asked about a very specific bath bomb product and asked it to specifically pull in X commentary. And you can see now there are over 50 posts that X have pulled in specific to that product. And this is a great way to understand what is sentiment on that platform. Do I potentially have a problem where I need to intervene? Or is this type of engagement something that I need to foster further? Next up, Perplexity. And in this case, we are looking for protein powders or different vitamins to help with athletic performance. And you'll see that Perplexity has some different sources, different layout, different user experience than the prior two examples. You can see here that it goes through its 20 sources, and it's very clear of where it's looking, what it's looking for, the different queries that it's doing on the web. It is a different approach with a different level of transparency than you'll find in something like ChatGPT or Gemini, which we'll look at next. And here you can see that Perplexity is also pulling in a lot of health-related sites. Here's the Mayo Clinic. Previously, we saw NIH.gov. So these are very authoritative medical sites that are talking about vitamins and protein powders specific to this query. Again, this is a very different type of content and different user experience than the original query we looked at in ChatGPT. Yet then here we also see that CBS.com is pulled in. So Perplexity is not exclusively looking at highly informed medical sites. It's also looking at consumer sites where you can purchase these products as well. So now I'm digging a step further. What are the top 5 brands and options that are offered? And we're digging in further. Here again, you can see that level of transparency with the queries that are being searched for, the sources that are being examined, and go through and look at WEIGH options, NSF certified options. And what I really like about Perplexity is at the bottom of that search query, it gives you other commonly asked queries. It suggests other things that you can answer, you could ask next. And it's very easy to just click on one of those questions and have Perplexity start pulling up other news and other sources for you, as opposed to having to go back and type out and write out your response. And that is unique to Perplexity. In the case of ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, it will say, here are some other questions that you could ask next, but you do actually have to engage with it as opposed to the very simple click and prompt experience that Perplexity offers. And finally, Gemini. Specifically here, we are looking at gut health. I've been hearing all about gut health and the importance of it, particularly around inflammation. So this is a very specific query with a very specific problem, and I've asked Gemini to tell me more. And here Gemini is going through and it's going to give you a lot of more medical style information, and it does provide a lot of links to, for example, the Cleveland Clinic, again, pulling in that medical information about your gut microbiome and your immune system. And so it's going to go through about the potential stomach impacts, signs that there's potential gut challenges, what you could do next, and it gives you the link on the bottom to indicate sources where you can go through and read more, all the way at the bottom, or line by line. It does also give you those examples that you can dig into further. And here now I will continue prompting so that I can learn more about different multivitamins or different health supplements that could support the improvement of gut health. And so here we're going to start seeing different tables, different options presented, different brand options presented, as opposed to this initial educational prompt and educational recommendation that's given in the beginning. Here, Gemini goes through and talks about targeted gut health multivitamins. It talks about probiotics, prebiotics. We start asking, what is the difference? What are the similarities? And you see that it is pulling in these third-party sites like Healthline, where there are different recommendations, 9 best, 5 best listicle style articles. And this is where your earned media is so important to ensure that you have a presence in these sorts of PR mentions, whether they are true earned PR or affiliate PR opportunities. Both of those are pulled in equally in this case. Affiliate PR opportunities, otherwise thought of as PR opportunities where you pay for the placement, are treated with equal value or equal measure in large language models. We've not yet seen large language models discount that payment, that affiliate opportunity, over the true earned placements themselves. And so here we're starting to dig in further, compare Ritual with Thorn, 2 different brands, 2 different leading brands in the space, and asking it to give pros, cons, traceability, design, different options, what are they best for? And this is where large language models are excellent. They're able to go and cultivate and curate this list, or these long lists of external sources, and put it into an easy to read, in this case, bulleted format, table style format. I don't have to go into organic search, click on a lot of different blue links, do some reading, think through all this myself. Instead, it just gives me an easy to read situation, an easy to read site, can scroll through and learn what I need to learn to make the best decision for me and my needs. So what do these screen recordings show us? There has been a significant evolution of how we find answers over the last 5 decades. We used to have to flip through the yellow pages and find a human who we could call to help tell us what we needed to know. From there, we were able to log on to things like America Online or Ask Jeeves to find the answers that we needed. However, for the last 2 decades, Google has been the uncontested champion of providing answers to people's queries through the form of either blue organic links down a page or paid search placements at the very top. However, in the last 3 years, we've seen their dominance start to fade as large language models have come to the fore and started driving consumer behavior. Now, places like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini are leading the charge as the next frontier of search. Ultimately, we know that information discovery is changing. An inflection point has occurred, and billions of consumers are using ChatGPT, Gemini, others, every single week for instant answers. They're no longer scrolling through a dozen blue links down a page. They're no longer searching and picking out information that they require. They're no longer scrolling social media endlessly or reading the news to find what they want and what they need to answer their questions. And this explosive growth in AI search is not a fad. It's not a trend that will go away. Currently, there are approximately 900 million active weekly users of ChatGPT alone, and ChatGPT's usage represents about 60% of the Gen AI market share, with Gemini coming in second at about 15%, Copilot at nearly 13%, Perplexity at nearly 6%, Claude at 5%, and other large language models beyond that. There are many different options in the space when you need a large language model to answer your question. But we do see that ChatGPT is the largest of all of them. And its meteoric rise has rewired content consumption. In June of last year, June 2025, ChatGPT broke into the top 5 most visited sites worldwide, surpassing Amazon and X, as well as Reddit and Wikipedia. This growth is notable because it represents a significant shift in consumer behavior. It's no longer those seeking entertainment or shopping, but now people are using ChatGPT for intent-based answers, creativity, productivity, and learning. There is a new digital hierarchy where AI-first information discovery is becoming a daily habit for millions, if not billions, of people. And as AI has joined search and social as a top-tier destination, we do see that these legacy giants remain. Google and YouTube are the top 2 websites by monthly visits, so Alphabet, and then Facebook and Instagram are the 3rd and 4th largest websites by monthly visits, therefore Meta. But now ChatGPT has come up to threaten both Alphabet and Meta in their dominance. As we've seen ChatGPT grow from nearly no traffic in September 2022 to Instagram scale traffic by September of 2025. So we do see in this data that the digital landscape is shifting from scrolling and consuming to solving, creating, and conversing. And the volume of these conversations is rising every single day around the world. We see that ChatGPT's daily active usage has risen from about 25% in September of 2024 to about 45% by July of 2025, while over the same time period, Google's usage has remained stable at just above 60%. So we know that OpenAI is closing this gap, and large language models are closing the gap on the traditional search experience. But don't throw out the baby with the bathwater just yet. Traditional search isn't dying, and SEO cannot be completely ignored. Instead, the data shows us that search is evolving into a 2-track system. Nearly 95% of ChatGPT users are still using Google for specific needs. ChatGPT is just adding a new layer, a conversational, context-rich, problem-solving layer. And the result is that users are blending traditional search and Gen AI interactions as complementary workflows for multimodal information discovery and usage. And while we see this multimodal search frontier evolving, we do know that those within AI search are not clicking out to websites with the same frequency that traditional search experiences have provided. Naturally, as we saw in the screen shares a few minutes ago, we know that people are doing their research and having involved conversations with AI to be able to figure out what they want and what they need and make those decisions off-site. Yet, those who do visit from AI search are much higher quality and are much higher value for your brand and organization. Data shows that AI search traffic converts 5 times higher than traditional search. AI traffic views 3.2 times more pages and stays 4.1 times longer than traditional search. AI search delivers a $47 average order value versus $9 from Google. And those customers have a 67% higher lifetime value to your business. And ultimately, their speed of purchase is much faster. 73% of AI visitors convert within the first session versus 23% from traditional search environments. As we saw from those screen recordings, users are doing all of the exploratory fact-finding that they need within their large language model. So once they arrive at your site, they're doing some high-level searching, they're checking out options, colors, features, functionalities, and then they're ready to make a decision. Because when they arrive at your site, they've already decided that they want to buy. So all of this data leads us to the question of how do you get found in large language models? As billions of people around the world are relying on generative AI search to answer their questions every single day, it's important as a brand that you understand how do you appear in large language models, when do you appear, for what do you appear, and what is the sentiment behind your mentions. And ultimately, once you know that information, you can contemplate how you want to change that sentiment, how you want to show up for new or different prompts, how you want to change your authority. So the first step is knowing what are the most important factors driving visibility in large language models. And we do know that AI search is not SEO. The strategy for AI search builds on SEO foundations, but it adds new requirements for LLM visibility. It requires different but complementary technical structures, schema markup, and .txt files to drive visibility within AI. It has a new and different type of content writing. Gone are the days of keyword stuff blogs, and instead now natural language processing means that your content needs to be rewritten or adjusted to reflect how a consumer or how a person would normally speak or write. And content strategy needs to include channels that potentially it's never touched before. You're no longer thinking about a content strategy specifically for your website or for your blog, but now you need to think about how that strategy also extends to social media, how it extends to your community management, and how it extends to your earned media or your PR as well. We know that there are 3 core pillars of AI search, 3 general marketing areas that the large language models are learning from and pulling in. First, earned and affiliate media, your public relations efforts. Second, your content and creative, your owned universe, your site, your blog, all of the content that exists there, as well as your social media and channels that you might not think about, like Reddit or Wikipedia, that perhaps you haven't addressed in a very long time or ever. And finally, technical optimizations, the technical structure of the site itself. So, starting in that right-hand pillar with technical optimizations, this is the table stakes. If your site is not set up appropriately, if it's not welcoming in the AI bot that has HTML that's easy for the large language model to parse through, your site will not be qualified. Your brand will not be qualified. And as such, the large language model will only be able to rely on what third parties write about you and say about you in order to inform their results. So, in order to ensure that you've opened the front door to your brand and welcomed in the AI bot to your home, you need to ensure that your AI optimizations are all done correctly, specifically on your technical landscape. From there, we talk about content and creative, owned media, and PR or earned media. And we need to ensure that your content strategy is aligned to prompt research. So what is prompt research? Prompt research is very similar to keyword research for those of you with an SEO background. It's understanding what are the types of prompts users are putting into ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, in order to look for services or products offered by your brand, or to research your brand itself. The former would be deemed non-branded prompts, and the latter branded prompts. And it's important to make sure and to very first align on your prompt strategy, so then you can dig in and understand the types of content you need to produce and where you need to place that content to drive results in AI search. Based on that, you can optimize the existing content on your site. You can figure out if or how you need to condense content in order to appease the natural language processing requirements of the large language model. You can also then figure out what new types of content need to be created for your blog, for your site, for social media, what themes need to be extended into community management, need to be extended into Reddit, potentially edits that you might want to make to your Wikipedia page to ensure that your brand is saying the things and showing up in the way that you want it to show up on the internet more generally, and therefore will reflect in large language models specifically. And based on that content strategy, it is also necessary to visit or revisit what you're doing in earned media. We know that reputable media placements drive results. They are extremely important to these large language models. The large language models are going out and looking at third-party sources to determine if what you're saying about yourself is true. Is it actually reflected in the consumer's experience, in a journalist's experience? And we do also know that at this point in time, affiliate PR placements, or placements that you've paid to be a part of, are treated with the same weight as true earned pieces. Therefore, that means that if your organization wants to pay to be included in listicles by relevant outlets, that will carry the same weight as a true journalist review of your product. And here we see in this example on the slide, a query specific to digital camera research. And here we can see that the Nikon camera is recommended, and TechRadar in particular is used as a source. And this is one of the sources that ChatGPT has formed a partnership with. Since July of 2023, OpenAI has been making periodic partnerships with the most reputable media outlets, 18 of them, in fact. And those 18 represent more than 450 publications worldwide. And OpenAI has made these partnerships because it's given them access to not only new content, but also the entire back catalog of articles that have been written from the beginning of time that has been digitized by these publications. This includes content behind the paywall, so content that would not be openly accessible to the consumer. And here, ChatGPT is able to then use that content to make its recommendations to the consumer. And in exchange, ChatGPT is legally bound to provide links out to that content, thereby giving traffic to those organizations and those websites. So it's important to consider, how is your PR strategy using these preferential partnerships to your advantage when crafting your content strategy and when crafting your media approach? So all this may leave you wondering, what do I do next? Where do I go from here? We've talked about the demographics and the psychographics, the emerging consumer trends related to large language models, and we've talked about what is most important to optimize in your marketing ecosystem to appear in large language models. But now, how do you take the next step and start putting together an actionable strategy? Well, first and foremost, I recommend that you as a brand start forging relationships internally. A lot of the brands that I work with prior to our engagement didn't necessarily know other individuals within their marketing organization, particularly if you're a very large and globally dispersed organization. The group that's running SEO might be sitting across the world from the group that manages PR. Potentially, different areas of the organization are working with different agencies, and you've never met them before. Start finding out who does what and start those conversations, build those relationships, because that will be the most important factor when starting to craft these overarching content strategies and looking to drive results in AI. From there, once you know these different members of your team, start auditing your brand content. I recommend that you sit down in a meeting room together or pull up in a virtual meeting room together and share your screen, pull up ChatGPT, pull up Gemini, and start asking questions about your organization. What does it say about your company? Do you like what it says? Is it accurate? Start asking questions about your vertical, about the products that you offer without your brand attached. Is the large language model recommending your products, or are you missing? This is the perfect place to start. And from there, for those of you specifically working within PR, I recommend you start thinking about auditing that PR coverage. Where have you been driving placements over the last few years? And where do you not have relationships in those 450 plus publications that we just talked about? And from there, you can start thinking about how to build those relationships to target your new audience, the AI bot. And of course, if you have any questions, if you need help, that's what we are here for. Feel free to reach out, and it'd be a pleasure to continue the conversation.